Welcome back here with Goldberg. Today I'm going to be discussing a concept which has kind of been a theme for this channel. So some years back we did the video, White Women Are Now a Microaggression. And I was pointing out the fact that no matter how much you grovel in front of the left, whether you want to call it the anti-frachos or perhaps the bowel movements matter, these organizations, you're still never going to be able to give enough. And this phenomenon has now gotten the label on the internet.com of cancel culture. I don't like the term cancel, though, because it implies that it's a relatively non-malicious, it's not a big deal, when in fact the appropriate term is economic or financial terrorism. It's this idea that if you disagree with the mob, not only do you have to be shouted down, but we have to ensure you have no way of making money, of holding a job, running a business, attaining education. You have to essentially be railroaded out of society to where you're just sitting in the stockades. Although at least those people could collect food. I don't think that the targets in this case are permitted to do the same. So you may or may not have heard about Gordon Klein. He's a professor or a lecturer of accounting for many years at UCLA. And he was given this request by some students. They said that you need to postpone exams because of the trauma of the Minneapolis incident with the cop and the guy who was an ex-con. I didn't realize how many horrible things he had done. I think it's astonishing how you can have all this obsession with social distancing, but you can be essentially a scumbag and petty criminal, but in the right moment you then become the hero with the massive funerals that violate all the guidelines. In fact, we're hearing from health officials now that no, you can't hang out in large groups, but you can protest. That just shows you how much garbage is mixed into this whole thing. But he responded, and I have it here. He was asking questions. Obviously, he was kind of trolling them. He said, do you know the names of the classmates that are black? How can I identify them since we've been having only online classes? Are there any students that may be of mixed parentage, like half black, half Asian? What do you suggest I do with respect to them? A full concession or just half? Do you have any ideas if they are from Minneapolis? And if they are white students, wouldn't they actually be more devastated because perhaps they feel everyone assumes they're racist? Ooh! And for this, he's been put on leave, which could mean he actually ends up losing his job. Now, this is not an isolated incident, okay? I've talked about this affecting the right and the left for many years. I remember the CFO of Chick-fil-A, the cops in Virginia. They just are on Twitter all, chomping at the bit because some neo-Nazi, he's 18, got accepted to GMU, and we have to make sure his offer is rescinded. How dare he be on campus? And I'm thinking, okay, hold on a second. Don't we always hear from leftists that we have to, education, it's the key to moving up, it's the key to overcoming oppression. So even if this guy has those actual views, which is questionable, wouldn't it be good for him to go into a university environment where he can learn and be exposed to different ideas? Or is the very fact that someone holds a view means that they're sort of cursed for life? And you see that with all this economic terrorism. Again, not about disagreement. It's you are not allowed to have any livelihood because I don't like you, what you believe, or what you don't believe. And of course, I guess they think with these practices of coercion, of trying to run people out of town, of burning things, assaulting, killing cops, that bowel movements matter, the Antifa are going to somehow win hearts and minds. And it's going to draw folks over to their side. But I'll tell you what the real outcome is going to be. And I think it's tragic, to be perfectly honest. I speak as someone, and I know that's going to be the cliche thing the woke crowd hates. But, growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. My closest friend was black. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on racial issues, though. We were, being friends, playing video games, making like action movies at home, watching movies. That's what we did. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on, woke this, woke that. And it's astonishing, though, that we've gotten to this point where I honestly believe the outcome for most of the world, it's not going to be integrating folks better. It's not going to be welcoming them. It's not going to improve race relations. In fact, I think it's going to lead to people who are not black, or perhaps are black but don't ascribe to these views, shunning more black people, tacitly discriminating more against black people. And think about it for a second. You can do all you want in terms of trying to stamp out visible signs of this. Oh my God, if we see a flag, we fall into the recovery position, start crying. If we see a statue, it triggers us. Certain words offend us. If we don't see enough of ours on TV, we unacceptable. We can't handle that. We have to, it has to be addressed. Well, people might do that. They can pay lip service, but at a certain point, they're going to simply find ways to stay away from you because they see you as a liability. That's the shame. I don't know if you'll have read the book Freakonomics. They talked about the resumes that had stereotypically black names that got less responses. That's one way that people will do it. Because if they see a person who's proudly declares XYZ, I'm not going to abide by your oppressive grooming standards, I want my natural this, I want to express this, they might, pay lip service and promote it, but they're going to see you as a problem because you're going to come in there and immediately you're going to see everything as racism, right? I worked with some folks who, good people, but just, happen to be kind of on the lazier side. But they thought they were justified in being lazy, by the way. And they always would hang that over the company. If you discipline me, if you terminate me, I'm going to sue you for racism, right? It's no, working hard versus being lazy, that's not a racial thing. That's based upon your work ethic, who you are as a person. But they'll always use that. And so, like I said, they're going to view people as a potential issue. Social clubs, relationships, folks are going to see it as a liability, as something that could put them at risk simply being in proximity. So yes, they're going to pay the lip service, which is really just about making themselves feel better. But are they going to fundamentally change? There's only so much you can do to address so-called thought crime. And certainly when you go after people to a certain extent, the backlash tends to be, we want less to do with you. And I honestly think that's going to be the outcome, which may not be what these people are shooting for. What's really interesting is that, of course, a couple of years ago when that weirdo Richard Spencer was kind of popular, and he was saying, we just want our own land. And they're like, oh, how can you say that? What they're doing, though, with these movements is they're pushing folks further apart. They're essentially promoting more segregation. You might recall the whole concept of white flight, right? White people moving out of cities after the Great Migration because of racism or perceived criminality, whatever you want to call it. But it's funny that they complain about that, but then they turned around when the rich developers were coming in and complain about gentrification. So it's almost like when you have this mentality where you don't want to live with a group of people because you assume they're always out to get you, and then you always make the conclusion that they have somehow bad intention with whatever they're doing, even if they're not necessarily affecting you directly, but simply the way they live their life. You're always looking for a place where they've done something wrong. That's what happens. People grow further apart, and instead of us actually coming together and getting over things, it worsens. And that's a shame because, like I said, I have no real stake in this whole thing, but you start to see how attitudes are going to shift. And when your message, when your public relations campaign is so atrocious and so abrasive to people, even if they want to sympathize with you, the outcome is unlikely to be good. So, my recommendation is stay safe out there, be a good person, treat people with respect, but I'm afraid these actors are going to totally backfire as far as their methods are concerned.